vision for the festival was to highlight the stories and representations by, for, and with Black and Indigenous people, as well as other people of color who are filmmakers, writers, and/or actors. Congratulations to the following filmmakers and films: Haley Dang's Mangoes for Best Narrative Film, Alice Zhang's Flower for Best Animated Film, Ampo Locke's Representation for Best Experimental Film, Mecca Lewis's Me Entiendes for Best Documentary Film, Daniela Martinez's Shift for Jury Award, and Isabella Menino's Blue Hands for Audience Award. Stay tuned until after the program to participate in a live Q&A with the filmmakers. The festival organizers would also like to reiterate our thanks to Fastlights, Odyssey Bookshop, and Insomnia Cookies. Thank you to these local Pioneer Valley businesses for having sponsored this year's festival and providing prizes to our winning filmmakers. We would also like to thank Northampton Open Media and Focus Locus for hosting this event. Thank you for supporting student films and enjoy the program, which is starting now.
You have to go. You should have said that. You know how he is.
Ma, you don't have to do this.
Do I have a choice?
Yes, you do. Please, Mommy, don't
Go!
do this.
Mom! Mom!
Don't do
Go!
this.
Why don't you have a jacket on?
It was too late to bring one.
Mama left some soup for you on the table. She was tired, so I told her to go to bed. How is she? She's good. She's just worried about you. I'm gonna go to bed. I have pajamas for you in the bathroom. Love you.
Do I have a choice?
Mi niña, ¿ese eres tú? Ven, ven a dormir con mamá.
Listen. 1%. Indigenous people make up 1% of this nation, but there are 567 federally recognized tribes. But do we see that reflected in films? Of course not. Unheard and unseen. Non-existent. No control of our narrative. And yet, there's so much history, so much background, so much knowledge that interacts with the world and has so many explanations of how we came to be. The only representation we have is through archaic and trivial representation. Cowboys and Indians. Representation in cinema. It's something that's not on the forefront of your mind when you think of the history of Indigenous cinema. The first thing you think of is Westerns, Pocahontas, Peter Pan, and the horrible stereotypes that depict our people. Damn. Even when I was younger, I wished I looked like Pocahontas so at least people would identify me as Native. There are so many nuances in the Indigenous identity. There's not a singular Indigenous. Our indigeneity is portrayed through the colonized perspectives, and it doesn't show who we truly are. My name is Ampa Wulak, and I come from Standing Rock, and I come from Baltimore. And you know what? I am tired of being ignored. I am tired of being spoken over. I'm tired of being your token. It's not I want to be visible for me anymore. It's I will be visible. You will see me now.
How stupid are our leaders? How stupid are they to allow this to happen? Here in Minnesota, you've seen firsthand the problems caused with faulty refugee vetting, with large numbers of Somali refugees coming into your state without your knowledge, without your support or approval, and with some of them then joining ISIS and spreading their extremist views all over our country and all over the world. And everybody's reading about the disaster taking place in Minnesota. Everybody's reading about it. You've seen the recent terrorist
Hello?
knife attack in St. Cloud.
I called you earlier.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
You didn't send us any money this month.
I'll send it soon.
We don't have anyone else who can help us.
The least they can do for you. You've suffered enough.
I will try.
And we will pause that nation
This call is costing me. Salam.
full security
Salam.
has been performed, and until a proven vetting mechanism has been
How was traffic today?
Not bad. Here, I wrote the directions here. Should be there by the morning, God willing. Takon ba habusan no welige halaysan sidii xoolahiiba xiranna lagu hayaa Takon ba habusan no weligeed halaysan sidii xoolahiiba xidhanna lagu hayaa. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. الله أكبر.
RCMP dispatch, bonjour.
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah. I'm from Somalia.
Okay, what's your name?
Mohammed.
And where are you?
I just crossed the border of US to Canada. Actually, I'm seeking asylum.
Okay, Muhammad. Can you stop walking and stay there on the highway? You want the officers to pick you up, right?
Canadian? Canadian officer?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Do you see anything around you? Any buildings?
No.
Do you have any status in the United States?
No.
Where did you reside before entering Canada?
Minneapolis.
How did you make the trip?
I walked.
Did anyone help you plan this trip?
No. I had directions.
Do you have a record in the U.S.?
I just want help.
Alto Giro es también una oportunidad de conocer a los hombres y mujeres que viven en él, en muchos casos en comunidades ubicadas en el mismo corazón de la ciudad.
See that one? My father's. That's the kind of bullshit images that are still popular.
¿Te van a ver eso o qué? ¿Estás conmigo? Sí,
You know, you saw those, but I've seen worse. I took pictures some years ago. Gloria put it up on the web. Really pornographic things with black people are selling. You know, black woman sitting on a toilet with her parts exposed. That's a joke for them. That's a tourist something to buy.
I just couldn't imagine displaying that in my home.
That's what they're selling.
Yeah, it's
black
crazy.
man sitting there with his print. Like, you should see it. Positively pornographic.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that I saw with a black man. It's a carved image of a black man with his pants. He's climbing up a bottle of rum.
I've seen that one.
And the guy who was selling it was a black guy. This is young. This is run by the university there, University of Havana. I live out there. So I said to him, and I think he's an educated guy. He speaks English, and I suspect he might be a student, which means he should know more. So I just said, Like, why are you selling images like this? I said, you're a black man. I said, there are other pretty positive images of black people that you can sell. Why are you selling this? Well, I asked him about these images. He said, well, that's the way our people were back then. A fucking black man too. Sorry for my language. You can tell how I get pissed off. This is where there's the big cauldrons where they boil the sugarcane juice to make sugar. This is serious. That there, what you're looking at, are enslaved black people. See the name of some of the gods up there at the bottom of the pictures? Chango, Ochun, Yamaya, Obalata. You see them all there? Those are the gods of the Orisha, the pantheon.
El elemento y la casa sobre todo a ver, no es que vivió, pero como hizo aquí el periódico, que fue donde defendió la raza.
It was here in this place where he was fighting to defend black people and the foundation of the two newspapers, La Igualdad, the Equality, and La Fraternidad. So this place is very important.
lo cual, después de 1886, y marco esta fecha porque es cuando se decreta la abolición de la esclavitud, fue creado el Directorio Central de las Sociedades de la Raza de Color de Cuba. En todo el país tenían ellos esas sociedades que eran filiales de ellos. Quiere decir que se contaba con un aparato, lo único que no estaba organizado lo suficiente como para hacer una propaganda fuerte en contra del racismo. Y en el año 91, Juan Gualberto Gómez es nombrado como presidente titular de esta organización, el Directorio Central. De modo que cuando en el año 92 se crea el Partido Revolucionario Cubano, prácticamente está en manos de Juan Gualberto, que tiene un vínculo directo con Martí, una organización antirracista a lo largo de todo el país.
One. Welcome to the question and answer section of the program, where you'll be able to submit questions to be answered by the filmmakers themselves. But first, introductions. My name is Amparo. I am a junior at Smith College, and I'll be moderating the Q&A section for today. And filmmakers, if you could introduce yourselves as I call out your names, your year, school, and what film you created, that would be great. We can start with Amparo.
Hi, can you hear me? Hopefully you can.
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Hi everyone, my name is Ampa Olak. I'm a senior at Mount Holyoke College. I'm a film studies major, and the film I created was Representation.
Mecca, if you could go next.
Hi, my name is Mecca Lewis. I'm a fourth-year student at Hampshire College studying film, nonfiction filmmaking specifically, and I created the film Me Entiendes.
Great. And Isabella?
Hi, I'm Isabella Menino. I'm a recent December graduate at Mount Holyoke College, and my film was Blue Hands.
Great. And just a reminder to whoever could be watching, you can submit your questions to any of the chats and we'll read them out. But first, let's start with a question for everyone. You can either raise your hand or just jump in. And it's a pretty general question. Why did you make this film? What inspired you? Why did you want to tell this story? So whoever would like to start can go ahead.
I can start. I went to Havana, Cuba with the Hampshire and Havana study abroad program, where folks were invited to do an independent study and do research of their choosing. And I was taking a lot of courses related to African American history, and so was really curious, as someone who had never left the country, what kind of similarities and differences there were between Black folks who have similar shared histories, but in terms of like slavery and how they diverge and differ. So I was driven to make the work in search for kind of some explanation from individuals that I had met about their perceptions of how Afro-Cuban culture has come to be. So that was kind of the driving questions of my work.
I can go next. So why I was inspired to make my film was mostly because I, as an Afro-Indigenous person, I feel like there's really missing representation within media. And I feel as someone who's Indigenous, and this is a lot of people are occupying on stolen land, but we don't really have that acknowledgement. We don't have that acknowledgement of the historical trauma, the genocide we went through. We don't have any acknowledgement that this is not, that this isn't our, this isn't, what is it called? Returned land. And like, I want to make sure that Indigenous people have a voice, and especially Indigenous people of all backgrounds, because indigeneity isn't necessarily a monolith. We're not homogenous. We have over 500 tribes. We speak like so many languages. We have so many cultural customs that are different from one another. We're not one and the same. But I feel like within media representation, that is definitely viewed that way, that we don't really have the nuances, and our fractured, I guess, identity is not really represented in media. And so I got pretty mad and I wrote this like visual poem out of like a response to that, and something that I see as a film major and going through my process of undergrad and learning all about film history and realizing that it's mostly from a white perspective. It's mostly from white history. So yeah, this was created in a lot of response to what I'm learning, to what I'm seeing in media. And yeah.
I'll go next. My film was created in tandem with a writing piece, my major thesis. And I think I am not a film major, but I wanted to involve film in some way along with this writing project I did, because I was interested in exploring the ways fiction, and specifically media creation through film, can bring out or explore identity and memory, and how what we think of self-identity and different identities in the self is actually expressed and created through fiction and through media. So I also was interested in themes of memory and history and remembered histories, and how these different narratives are created through fiction that then become embedded storytellings in conscious thought and in public consciousness, and how that then gets passed down and transformed through storytelling, through fiction and through film specifically. And my film was stop motion, because I was also interested in the ways stop motion and animation can be used to recreate imagined worlds, or like worlds that are exist in memory and are no longer tangible or filmable in the real world. So in that way, I was interested in exploring how fiction can then become real, and we can show it as real.
Great. Thank you for all your answers to that. You guys are so eloquent. All right, we don't have any audience questions yet, so just a reminder, if you're in the audience and you have a question, just submit it to the chat and I'll read it out for everyone. But we can move on. So my next question is just, what was your favorite part of working on your film? Was it something in production, post-production, if you made a documentary, interviews, like what was the most enjoyable part of your film? And anyone can answer first.
I can go. I feel like the most enjoyable part is realizing the relationship I have between me and the filming I did. Just going back to Indigenous filmmaking, I feel like there's a really special connection, relationship, a kinship between land and water. And I feel like this was like a really great opportunity to explore my relationship to my other kin, my plant kin, my relationship to the land that I hold, and like also acknowledging that's not my traditional place. I'm not traditionally from where it was filmed was in Pennsylvania. So it was also honoring and respecting the space I was also occupying, since that's not my tribal lands. And so I feel like it was really a moment to just explore like how I felt about water, especially being from Standing Rock and knowing that we also had a water is life protest, and water is so important. Water is healing. Water is what makes us. And also acknowledging like the relationship I have with the land and knowing how much environmental degradation there's been going on. So it was a moment for healing, a moment for space, and just a moment to create deeper connection between me and my relatives. And yeah.
I can go. I definitely think that I entered Havana with a certain set of like questions that I was hoping to have answered, that definitely were coming from a place of my Black American experience. And like while I had taken the previous semester like a course about the history of Cuba, then we dated all the way back to like the slave trade, and we talked about Haiti a lot as well. But I definitely came in with a certain sense of projections, and I, while it was frustrating, I really did appreciate and enjoy like the moment where like a lot of the like kind of more harder days where I didn't feel like I was finding any answers to the questions that I had, or like really approaching them completely either. Like the day that I kind of just kind of like felt resolved about that and kind of accepted that was kind of one of the better days where I started looking a little bit like farther back, and I think it just kind of helped me collect a lot of things and just kind of be more open about what I thought the work was going to be. So that wasn't necessarily like all fun, but I think that it was definitely a necessary process and part of my filmmaking, and that was before I had to come back to the States to then synthesize all of that. But
yeah, for me, it was definitely the process of filmmaking itself and creating both the sets and the figures that I used in the scenes. I did storyboard beforehand, but really sitting down with like my sets and like my materials, it was a challenging process that was an interesting experience for me because I had never created such a long, like involved project before. I had done previous shorter stop motion films, but this was one that I was really looking to convey a specific message and story. So that was both fun and challenging, because sometimes I would then look back on the stills and it wouldn't look like one move was off, so then I'd have to go back and recreate a certain scene. So it was very much an involved on both sides project where I was sitting down with the materials, but then as I was creating and as I was looking at what I had in front of me, I was then going back to the storyboard and really changing what I had envisioned for the scenes. What I had imagined then changed as what I saw, what I could specifically do with the physical materials that I had. And that then changed what I was imagining for the piece. So that was an interesting learning experience for me, I think, and will change how I can go forward making different films.
Great, thank you for your responses. We have an audience question here for Mecca. This person says, the almost book-ending images of the obscured TV footage are so striking, like the television. Could you talk a bit about the choice of having those at the beginning and the end?
Yeah. I think that I had done a lot of interviews, and the last person that I interviewed lived in a part of Cuba that is more like the landscape is more similar to what they would refer to as like El Campo, which is like the countryside, and it was just like an area that was not very close to the city where I'd been spending most of my time. And I know that interview is significant in a way that kind of, I think, allowed me to think more about like, or just kind of like a reminder that Cuba wasn't homogenous either in terms of like the Black stories that I was hearing. And so long story short is that the woman, I went to her home, and I hadn't seen a television in any other homes that I had been to and people that I'd been chatting with, which in terms of like the film that I was working on, and this woman kind of put the television on for me while she was like making me food. And I was just flipping through, and there was that program Naturama, and I, right outside of her window was like the ocean and all these palm trees, but like this wide open countryside. And it was just like, personally, as someone from the city, I've like never really seen such a variety of like, I don't know, kind of natural resources and landscapes all in one in that, until that moment in that way. And I just thought that in my memory, that those images of like the like various different landscapes of this program that was edited together, and like how it was like so beautiful, but I thought that the place that I was looking at was so beautiful, just kind of for me was, I think that the film kind of became more of like about my reflection and journey of thinking. And so I think that those two images kind of start and like something that I just saw a lot of variety, and it kind of represents that variety in terms of like just all the kinds of things, or like people and like animals and landscapes and those images on the TV that I know. Also the way that the television was recorded, I think the starkness of like the blaring lights and things like that, I thought really like made the work end and begin in a really stark manner that I kind of was hoping people would like, be paying attention right off the bat kind of. So I think in that way, just like visually that did that as well, it served that purpose.
Great. Thank you. Ampo, I know that your film also has nature as a very important element, and you already spoke a little bit about it, but could you talk about your decisions, like how you decided to film like the nature and the landscape? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess the reason my process of filming the nature was being able to just, there was no other crew other than myself. I was the only person filming, except for the one shot. I had my friend to record for me. But other than that, it was mostly just myself and like in the ground. And like the way I kind of approached it is like kind of the way you would approach ceremony, and the sense of like making sure that you really uphold a lot of respect for what you're filming, because I don't think it's really something that should be seen as dismissive, especially since what I wanted to get across is that not only like are we still here, we're like here within like plants and nature, and like where our impact can be felt through nature. So I wanted to make sure that was seen across, and I wanted to have like moments of going in and out of focus, because sometimes I feel like our visibility can be sometimes seen, sometimes not, but really fuzzy. And I also wanted to like, I just like filming water as well, because I feel like you just hearing the rivers like bubble, whatever the word is for water, just hearing that, I just can feel like it's so cleansing and so healing. So yeah, it felt like basically the approach or the process was treating it how I would treat ceremony. So just trying to have a lot of respect for the process. So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you so much for that answer. The next question is for Isabella. I know that you're not a film major and this was done for a thesis project. Could you talk a little bit more about that and like the theory that is going on behind your film, because there's a lot of concepts there that are playing with the format.
Yeah. I'm a December graduate, so my theory was like back in the winter semester. But I was interested a lot in exploring identity and identification, and I drew from one was Jose Muñoz's Disidentifications and how fiction and belief can change and shape identity. So in my paper and both in my film, I looked at how the physical can impact what we perceive as immaterial, and this perceived boundary between what is quote real and what is quote imaginary, and how those are actually very entangled and make up what we consider identity, what we consider the real world. They're actually very much involved in each other. And I drew a lot, I was inspired a lot from Amanda Strong, who she's doing her own stop motion films, and she deals a lot with history and recreating worlds and how that can then impact storytelling and colonial history. So in that aspect, I was also interested in my theories of how storytelling and using specifically stop motion can recreate certain worlds. And because it's a recreation, it's this dichotomy between like, it's not real, but yet by creating it, by having physical film of it, it then makes it real. And there's this tension that I wanted to explore in what we perceive as real and what we perceive as imaginary. So it was that kind of running theme that I wanted to explore through this film, which doesn't directly relate to my paper in any other aspect other than that. But it was that tension, that conflict between what we perceive as the different real and the different imaginary worlds, which can actually be meshed and recreated through film and specifically through stop action, which is how I used it. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much. So my next question, I'm sure you guys have all answered it 5 billion times before, but here it is. How did the pandemic and COVID-19 affect your filmmaking process? And this is open for everyone, so go ahead.
I'll go first. For me, I did not have, midway through the spring semester, we got the news, we had to leave campus, and I was already kind of toying with the idea of making a stop motion, but coming back to New York, coming back to where I live off campus, it kind of sealed the deal for me because I had more materials here, I had more supplies, and I was able to really have a space to make this stop motion scene. And yet, because I wasn't at campus, I didn't have like the nice cameras, like all the setups, I didn't have the maker space, and there was all of this technology and other stuff that I didn't have. So it was a very give and take of like, well, here I have different materials, but over there I would have had like the stands and the help from LITS and the library. So for me, it was a big impact.
I can go next. My film was not impacted by COVID because it was filmed before COVID. So quick answer.
That's cool. Well, I was on a study abroad program when that happened. So I had to leave in the middle of shooting, which was like probably not great in like the grand scheme of things, because I could have learned more, I think. but I do think that it kind of like, having to come back and not being able to film anything more, I really had to just like get to know the footage that I had and make meaning out of it. So I don't necessarily know if the final form would have been related to what it is now if I, didn't have to kind of like really think much more deeply about everything that I had collected already before editing it.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. I'm also a filmmaker, and it was tough. The whole pandemic. We have another audience question here. So this audience member is interested to hear about what films or artworks you guys drew from to plan these pieces, or the lack of film and artwork that you could draw from. And this is open to everyone.
I mentioned earlier I drew a lot from Amanda Strong. She's an Indigenous creator. A lot of her stuff is on the internet. I recommend look her up. She has great stuff out there. And Kristen Dowell also wrote a lot of more article pieces analyzing her stuff. So I was inspired by her pieces just in the recreating of worlds and histories. And in that aspect, and of using these like handmade sets and figures, like her stuff is so detailed and like intricate. It's really amazing. And so I was inspired by that idea and that spirit, I guess.
When I was in Cuba, I was working under the mentorship of Cuban filmmaker Gloria Rolando, who is one of the, I believe she was the first Black woman actually to be recognized by the Cuban National Film Society. And so she's made a lot of works that detail both her personal Black history as like an Afro-Cuban woman, but has done a lot of works that detail like Black Cuban history as well in general, or Afro-Cuban history. And a lot of it seemingly, I mean, I watched a lot of her work, and I watched a lot of her work in tandem with some of the cuts that I would make and show her, and we'd watch things that she had made to kind of refer and just kind of fact check like the history, and I don't know, that kind of draw information and inspiration from the get-go to like get an understanding of how people have represented, she specifically and other Afro-Cuban filmmakers have represented Black people on screen there. So that wasn't like a film or any like films that I was like, oh, I love this style, I'm gonna like, it inspires me, but definitely the content of all of the work that I saw really was like I was thinking about a lot when gearing up to make this one.
For me, this film was created during a fellowship, and the fellowship was created out of the Waters Life Standing Rock protests. It was like an Awake Film Fellowship. That's the name of it. And so my inspiration, I think, directly came from the movie that the fellowship was created under, if that makes sense. It was called Awake, A Dream from Standing Rock. It used to be on Netflix, but now it's not. But it had a really maybe non-traditional, non-linear narrative. And I really enjoyed that because it was really split up into 3 sections, and I was able to work with the director, the screenwriter, and like during this fellowship. And I feel like that really gave me inspiration to really hone in on how to be an Indigenous narrator. So yeah, it wasn't specifically, me watching a movie other than this one. This was more me responding to my community's needs and just working with other Indigenous curators at the time. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for those answers. I think we are going to be wrapping up here. I'm just going to ask one more question for all the filmmakers here. So basically, what's next? What's next in your plans? Are you going to be making more films? And also, where can viewers find you and view your work? And anyone can answer that.
I can go. I'm currently in the post-production phase of a film that I'm working on, a documentary film about West Baltimore and the Highway to Nowhere, which is a historic, unfinished highway project that really disrupted a community and displaced a lot of families, thousands of people. And I'm making a documentary about that and where people stand today. But yes, I have other works that people can check out on my website, mekalewis.com. And I have a lot of information about the project that I'm working on right now there as well.
I'll go next. For me, I'm a recent graduate, so I'm planning, next steps and looking to that. And I'm not currently planning any films, though I am keeping it up as a hobby, hopefully. My film can probably be found on the Five College Film Fest. I believe that's where it is. I don't have a website. That's very cool.
For me, big next steps is kind of a scary question as I'm graduating soon, and I am not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing. But I did just this past, I guess, last month, I finished a vampire film, inspiration of Twilight, What We Do in the Shadows. Yeah, it was really a lot of fun to create, and I felt really pleased by our collaboration as a team and what we're able to navigate in a pandemic. It was I felt like for what we were able to do, I'm really happy with how it came out. I don't have a website, but I feel like the best way to follow my updates is through my Instagram. It feels weird to plug my Instagram, but it's ampa.o. So yeah, anyways, thanks.
Great. Thank you guys so much for these amazing and insightful answers that really let us take a closer view to each of your films. And I just want to thank all the viewers who tuned in. I'd want to thank Northampton Open Media and the Focus Locus program for screening these films. And yeah, just a thanks and thank you to Liz for organizing everything. If you want to talk or cue something up.
Everyone watching, we do this show every couple of weeks on Wednesdays. So I don't really have anything to plug. Oh, and we have grants open. So if you are working on a project and you want to get a grant, go to northamptonopenmedia.com/2020-production-grants, and I'll put up a thing after. Yeah. And all the filmmakers stay for a couple minutes after. All right. And that's all. Good night, everybody. Do you want to say a final good night?
Good night.